Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Virtual Roundtable, a program hosted by ETCIO and brought to you by Splunk and Inspira. The topic for today's discussion is Battling the Cloud Complexity Challenges. In this session, you will hear from some of the digital leaders on how they are driving the adoption of digital technologies within their enterprise, particularly cloud and data driven insights, to address the new market conditions that have emerged in the wake of the COVID crisis, the challenges they are facing in doing so, and the various ways in which they are navigating these challenges. We have industry practitioners who've been there, done that, and are here to help. With me today is Dheeraj Goptani, VP Strategic Accounts APAC for Splunk, and Jyotika Nagpal, VP Business Operations for Inspira. Thank you for joining us, Dheeraj and Jyotika. And now, let me kickstart today's session by welcoming our esteemed panelists. Please join me in welcoming our panelists, Rahul Bharade, VP and Head Analytics and Insights, Jubilant Foodworks, Sanjay Tripathi, CDO Bestseller India, Vijay Chaluvasetti, Senior Director Platform Engineering, Walmart Global Tech, Vijay Dogra, VP Hindalco. We are especially delighted to welcome Saurabh Chandra, Managing Director for Boston Consulting Group India, as our distinguished panelists. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on. Before we dive into the discussion, let me set a bit of context with you all. The pandemic has had far-reaching ramifications on businesses across the globe. And in many ways, the future has been pulled forward faster than people might have expected. As the world begins to recalibrate itself after the pandemic, businesses have undergone a radical and irreversible shakeup of the status quo. In a world that we now live in, the enterprises need to be cloud enabled and data led. So, how can enterprises leverage these technologies while also managing the complexities they create? Let us find out from our panelists how they are trying to accomplish this within their enterprises. Saurav, I'd like to start off with you. Since you interact with digital leaders across different industries, and in your previous avatars, you've worked with digital native companies like Amazon, Flipkart, and Myntra, I'd like to get a perspective from you on how this whole equation has been changing. Digital is a full blown business imperative for organizations in the post pandemic world. Digital transformation will now have to be strategic in nature, which means that it will have to be driven top down by the board and the CEO. And it's also about innovating at scale, building cloud nativity, and a data led decision making capability. For organizations, this is not about changing the gradient of the curve they've been on. It's about a whole new equation that they need to write for the curve they are going to be on. So how do you see organizations focusing their efforts to get to this new curve? Can you help us see a big picture here?
Thank you, Sneha. First of all, thanks for such a warm welcome and very good afternoon to all the fellow friends. On this question, digital transformation. So two things. Today, post-COVID, things have dramatically changed. And this is contextualizing market today. So what we knew 2 years back, if the speed was X of digital transformation, currently it has become 5X. So that's the rapid scale of change happening. Now, there are two set of organizations which largely are looking at the digital transformation. First set is the new gen internet, 6-7 years, doing great. They always were pretty much on the open stack, and therefore they have easy runway to move between on-prem and cloud. So relatively, task is easier there. The second set of organizations who have been market leaders, they have regulatory checks to maintain, and they have legacy to carry upon. There also, the whole strategic viewpoint of digital organization has taken a center stage of conversation. So for an example, if you are into loan business, nobody wants to see assisted loan business now. They want to see do it yourself DIY loan business. If you are into lending, nobody wants to get a lending business having an intermediary of multiple DSPs, which means that you have to have technology in the center. Now, when you are having technology in the center for DIY, so the second part comes into question is that how will you scale up so much so fast? And that is where the relevance of cloud that has taken a center stage. However, when the cloud comes for matured listed companies, there is always a question about security, the way data fungibility will happen, and the way PII data will be managed, maintained. So that is how the market is thinking today.
Moving on to Rahul, Jubilant Foodworks is constantly evolving its business model considering the business environment. Prior to the outbreak of COVID, JFL forayed into the cloud kitchen business. It was the first to launch contactless delivery in the early days of the pandemic. It has tapped into the cooking at home trend during the pandemic and launched a ready to cook sauces and paste franchisee called Chef Boss. As JFL evolves into a food tech company, how are you leveraging data for personalizing the customer experience and communication? How are you leveraging it to respond to the fast evolving customer preference and needs and to constantly change the local conditions in the pandemic scenario?
Yeah, thanks, Naha. Thanks for the warm welcome and pleasure to be here. So, coming back to JFL, we've always been a customer-centric company, and we've disrupted industry with customer delight and our propositions. Pandemic has been difficult, and all the business have seen very difficult conditions. I hope they are the worst that we've ever see, and we'll never have to see that again. But consumer preferences are changing very fast. There is a increased adoption of digital as we go to tier 2 tier 3 cities. That's bringing customers to the platform, to the digital platforms for the first time. The local conditions have been very difficult, and what is a sentiment in one part of the country may not be the same in a different part of the country. So the two very important aspect for us were understanding the changing customer preferences, all of the new customers who are adopting the digital platform for the first time, as well as the existing customers whose preferences and were changing very rapidly in the last 1 year or so. So, and secondly, how do we become very localized in terms of knowing how the customers are responding, what the business conditions really are? And at JFL, we're leveraging digital and data to respond to these conditions in a way. So, first of all, just understanding the customer preferences, and not just because how can we offer the value, but how do we truly enrich the customer experience at every touch point, be it what kind of offers or a content we send to customers, be it how customers interact with us when they are on our app or when they come to our store for ordering the pizza. Recently, for example, we launched a personalized menu sequencing, which essentially will make sure that the sequence of the products I see on my app is going to be very relevant to how I like to see them really, what do I really prefer. And the same thing applies to every part of the business. The second part about the changing condition and the rapid changing preferences. Something as simple as ability to get a near real-time understanding of the business and what's happening on the ground, how stores are operating, how customers are responding. It's very easy for us to then make decisions in a very fast manner. To really, how do we evolve our scenario planning and forecasting capabilities to be able to account for the recent changes. All these fronts, the data and digital is playing a key part, helping us respond to the customers in a better way.
Okay. What were some of the challenges that you faced in trying to do all of this? Did you ever, have a problem with dark data because not all data is useful? So how did you, separate data that is accurate and that can be leveraged from data to insights to action? How did you go about doing that? Can you talk a little about that?
Sure. So, I mean, yeah, I think with the data, I think what you use and how to use it really, it's a question of choice. I think for us, everything starts with the customer and the hypothesis, what customer problem we are trying to solve, and that leads to then finding out what is leading to the problem or the hypothesis. We do test out the hypothesis, and then that leads to essentially taking the right action, which our customers are responding the best to. The secondly is the strong collaboration across various different functions to ensure that we are not just looking at a data or a business question, but we're looking at end-to-end how do we solve that problem in terms of the data, the insights, the technology, and the process, and that's how sort of we are able to bring the change.
Sanjay, you're from the retail industry. And as a retail brand, it is critical for bestseller to focus on customer engagement, insights, personalization, visibility of real time sales data, inventory location, and also enhancing the overall user experience to increase revisits, traffic, and loyalty. How are you focusing on data to gain advantage, especially in these times which are very tough for the retail industry because it's been hit hard by the COVID crisis? And can you also touch upon how you're managing the dark data effectively and efficiently to deliver business value from it?
Good afternoon, everyone, and thanks for having me here, Sneha. Uh, as you said, in the retail industry, of course, customer is at the center, and customer becomes even more important. When you have so many touch points, and you have to make customer come back to us, every time, and then you make the customer to shop. So here, at the difficult time, when the COVID hit and the stores were shut, almost like whole India stores were shut. Then the only weapon what we had was the data, right? How we leverage the data, how we curate the data, and get insights about each of our customers. And once we have the insight about each of the customer, then the target was basically to engage them while they are being at home, looking at their preferences. The lady buying the dresses, or for that matter, a teenager buying the jeans and then the tops very frequently. So the data, we were sitting on the huge stockpile of data, and we realized that we were not using it to the extent possible, and that is something what we learned during the COVID time, that leverage the data, leverage the CRM what we have, leverage the choices what customer has made in the past while being at the store, or being at our captive site, or buying it from the Mintras and Agios of the world. I think so that's where we personalize. We try to basically send the personalized campaigns to the customer while being at home, utilizing the social channels, to give the choices, and then make the customer to buy something from us. So that's how basically the whole CRM and then the whole master data of the customer what we had, curate the data and use it to best of advantage, and then go back to your customer who has been buying since years with you, and then give them the curated products, and listen to a customer, and then get the sales going, and that's how basically we have been leveraging the data in the tough times.
Okay, so Sanjay, you gave us an overarching data strategy that you have. Can you talk about the technology and the processes that go underneath that help you, deliver on each of these objectives? How are you leveraging technology to do this, to tap into real-time data?
So considering we are in retail and we operate across India, we have close to 300 odd stores, and I know the customer keep visiting every point of time. So our data strategy is to not only have the customer data, have the data the segment wise, the age wise, and when we talk about the
demographics
so the complete demographic of the customer, small town, big town, and then talk about the age preference, and the stores they are visiting, online site they are visiting. So there was a stockpile of data, but then curate the data and segment it in a way basically, and then utilize it, and that's where the technology comes into picture. So the data was there, so the backend system like SAPs and Oracles of the world. So we had the data, but then using some state of the art MDM tools, curate the data and then segment it wise, and then start targeting your customer.
Mm-hmm. Saurabh, digital transformation is a race without a finish line, and often the benefits can be elusive. Now, the value of metric lies in its ability to influence business decision making. When a success metric has a business context, it is much more interesting to the executive management because, as you know, they're interested in hard numbers and cold facts. So, how many organizations are struggling because of the business metrics are all over the place? How should digital leaders or CIOs select the digital KPIs to track, report, and act on the business initiatives?
So, I'll bring two lenses. One is at the CEO table and board level. When the proposal comes and when we are looking at it, or when I see that the proposal is built, then there is always revenue tagged to it. So maybe visibility wise at every level, ROI visibility may not be there, but when it comes to investing, visibility of ROI is certainly there. Now, when we bring it a little bit further down to the working group, the ROI that needs to be tagged has to be done in three dimensions. One is tangible. Let's say if you are saying I'm going to acquire X consumer, what does it mean, right? So it is a lead, and how will you convert it to prospect? So that is where a little bit of thinking has to be done. Second is engagement, which means that assume that if we are in this forum and you have two different real estate, one is ET and second is ET finance, then if we are on this platform and you trade ET finance, we have no choice, we will look at it, and maybe few of us may like it and few of us may buy it. So there is this engagement piece for cross sell. So again, a lead with engagement for cross sell gets to revenue. And the third one is brand positioning. Now that is where when you go traditional and print media, etc., you exactly know how much money it takes. And then when you go digital and you know your outreach, then you know how much money it takes. So if you see mathematically at each level, it can be quantified. And in industry today, in market, it gets quantified.
Vijay, your team at Walmart Global Tech offers technology solutions and platforms to the world's biggest retailer. How do you leverage data to give actionable insights to the business teams so that they can identify the consumption, spending, and transaction patterns of customers to maximize the potential of every purchase they make with Walmart?
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for Sneha for this forum. So Walmart, we definitely not completely on only reserved to a public cloud, right? We are both on the private, and also our strategy is actually to go with the multiple public cloud. So the way we are looking at is keep the private for the cost benefit, because private definitely gives a kind of a cost benefit, which is 60 to 70% of cheaper than the public. For our economics of scale, we can still manage to have the large private data centers and build technologies and our data strategy, leveraging the best of all three public, right? One is our private data centers, and we are into Azure and GCPs, and all three together, how are we going to leverage the data strategies? So the data for us, it's coming from the stores, coming from the e-commerce, and also from the distribution centers and complete supply chain. So our strategy is about how do we actually have a transparent application access pattern through an interaction layer that kind of connect to all three data centers. And the data could be from coming for the same customer from the stores and also from the e-commerce. So how do we actually merge all of this data, and where do we merge it? How is our regional affinities and sync between this data, and take only the relevant data and start doing the analysis? So since our customers inside Walmart itself, there are multiple business, multiple teams. So enabling the analytics and the machine learning through more of a self-service tool is what we look at. While we do it all three, definitely the challenges on the security, compliance, cost, and the privacy, all of this is kind of taken care across all the levels.
Mhm.
So the benefit is one is actually leveraging the best of things, but from a business standpoint, we make the data available to the business teams at the respective regions or kind of combining to all of the regions. So the business teams will have a single view of the customer data coming across multiple regions and multiple stores, edge networks, and all. So what we look at is a simplification. How do we simplify? One is leveraging the right technologies and deriving the insight for a customers or even for the product or any of those use cases that we look at. And regional affinity is very, very important for us because we need to have a low latency of the data because the volume of data that Walmart generates is humongous. And while we actually draw the insights could be, for example, for a COVID, the patterns have changed overnight and the buying patterns have changed. Customers who used to buy frequently smaller quantity, now they've started buying the bigger quantity and less frequency. Then what we were looking at a comparison of how the customer behaviors kind of versus last month or last week versus last year to now, it's all changing. So how do we actually surface all of this data in real time for the application teams and the business teams to get it right informations about the customers' behaviors and what is the projection as and when the COVID getting relaxed. So what is the buying patterns are changing? So all of these things are kind of supported by a very strong platform that is actually can build. We also look at the cost in terms of what kind of workload optimization that we do, and the speed is very, very important. And of course, our data platforms with all three together, we support inbuilt PCI, SOX, and HIPAA. Basically, we are also into health and wellness, so HIPAA compliance is very, very critical for us. So that's how Walmart is looking at.
Moving on to Vijay from Hindalco. You're from a hardcore manufacturing company, and traditionally, manufacturing companies have been laggards in terms of data adoption. They're data rich, but insights poor. How are you trying to do a course correction on this? How have you reprioritized data strategy in the wake of the pandemic? Can you talk about some of the specific data initiatives you've undertaken in this period?
Yeah, so the data strategy on the cloud have been just evolved from the last 2.5 years, and the preamble to that was we went into a big bang consolidation project pan Hindalco, and what has happened was we were using multiple data centers across different units and plants, and these data centers were using different platforms and different versions of ERP across their plants. So a decision was taken 2.5 years back to consolidate these servers and get into a single environment, which will have a single server at one location, and consolidation of these servers will happen. So when we took that decision, this is the call. At that time, Hindalco started thinking of cloud environment, getting into the cloud. When we decided the project on this, so at this particular moment of time, we started using Oracle Cloud because the product that we finalized was the Oracle ERP. So the ERP itself was in a two-phase. Actually, one was on-prem solutions, and another was on a cloud solution. So most of the products from at that time we got it on the cloud environment, and also got the opportunity from Oracle to they have a concept of credits, right? We got so many credits from them to use the cloud as an environment for going ahead any of the your future projects. So this is a way we started a cloud. Now going forward, as a strategy, most of our projects we are using cloud either as a infrastructure IaaS as a product, or SaaS as a product, or PaaS as a product. So going forward, most of our projects are onto that. We are hardly investing now on a hardware at a local data center levels.
Dheeraj, you've heard our panelists speak about their data strategy and the challenges that they are facing around data. Vijay from Walmart has challenges around data management and regulation. Sanjay has his own specific set of challenges, and so does Rahul. They also have challenges around tapping the real-time data. How can Splunk help organizations deal with this vast amount of unstructured data and the dark data that they have within their organizations?
Yeah, it's a great question, Sneha. And firstly, thanks everyone for taking the time for this. Really glad to be having this conversation. And uh, you mentioned a term previously in your questions, Sneha, of the concept of dark data, and it's mostly unaware to most people is they have a lot of information which they capture, which is really not looked at, and that's what we call as dark data. It's essentially not looked at in the sense you don't shine a light on it, you don't even in many cases capture it, right? So let's take the example of if you are going to a bank or even a retailer and they have a Wi-Fi there and you connect to the Wi-Fi, right? You have an experience as a consumer connecting to that Wi-Fi. Most companies don't really care about capturing that Wi-Fi information. But guess what? It has some really interesting information in it. For example, how long did I stand in line before I got to the teller, right? And actually spoke to that person, right? That can give me an idea of is the wait time for the experience with the teller too long? So, and the examples are several across your businesses. So if you really step back and started thinking, all of us have come from business analytics backgrounds, and we've grown up all from the data warehousing world, where we've put data in rows and columns and structured it, and now I'm going to ask it some great questions and go off and make some business decisions off of that. But guess what, guys? Everything has changed since then. The data which we capture, whether it's from your mobile devices, whether it's from your private cloud data centers, whether it's a public cloud environment, it's much, much more unstructured. And I hope you agree with me, because it's data coming from machines, it's coming from devices, it's coming from wireless environments, from networks, from all sorts of sources, which again, traditionally we're not even aware of or even comfortable handling, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Splunk, in the simplest of understanding for everybody here, is a great way to shine light on all of that data, which is unstructured, and make really good sense of it, do it in real time, and make actions and decisions in real time, right? So that's how we grew up in the last 17 years and became a $2.5 billion company. But what is relevant to you in your businesses, right? So even if it's Domino's Pizza, I'm sure you're familiar with them. When there was the big Super Bowl event, they had significant, massive spike of traffic on their websites, their mobile apps. Everybody wants to sit back and enjoy the football game, but they wanted their pizza within the hour, within that time. So Domino's then used Splunk to make sure that all the data which was coming from all those transactions was looked at and made sure that those pizzas got there in time. They had actually redesigned or refactored their whole company to be a digital company. And so technology was actually the front and center of how they drove their business. And Splunk was essentially capturing all that machine data to make it all happen, right? Similarly, if you look at banks out there, they're using Splunk from across the board, not only to look at the data which sits in their data centers, in their cloud environments, on mobile apps, to essentially have an end-to-end visibility of the customer experience, not only make sure that it's secure, but also make sure that they have real-time understanding. Even it could be someone like me tweeting that, I had a poor experience with one of my transactions online, and then I call the call center. The call center person should be immediately able to triangulate that Dheeraj was at the bank or he was online and he spent some time on the website,
Mm-hmm.
and put together that real-time experience in front of him so he can have a really educated, contextual, rich conversation with me, right?
Mm-hmm. So the view of customer across different interaction channels.
Exactly, right? But then having it again in real time, because you can apply all the data scientists and analysts to do all the data munging and get it ready, but it's too late.
Mm-hmm.
I am a millennial, not that I am, but if I was a millennial, I want all this happening within the first few minutes of my interaction. I'm an upset consumer, and I want to be taken care of immediately. I think Saurabh or Rahul had mentioned that earlier, that this, because the pandemic especially, you want your Swiggy deliveries to be happening right now, and there's no delays, right? So this new generation expects real-time responses and real-time customer service. So that's how I would put it for you, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Jyotika, you can bring in a perspective on security. And since organizations are dealing with vast amounts of data, it makes the attack surface very wide and varied. How can Inspira help organizations that are trying to attain a level of data maturity, yet safeguarding their data sets from security threat?
This is a very interesting question, and it's something that has, obviously boggled the minds of innovators in the last few years, especially. Innovation and security overall has always been viewed as, counter to each other, where one is going to slow down the other. And that is definitely not a way forward. So these two, digital innovation and cybersecurity, have to go hand in hand. This is no longer an option. Like Saurabh mentioned earlier when he opened his conversation, the rate of transformation is so swift today, and all businesses are real-time businesses. Earlier, we used to identify, this is real-time business, this is traditional business. Today,
actually, it's become an experience economy. So you're competing with e-commerce companies and different digital native companies.
Exactly. There is no scenario in this race where a traditional company is not going to require real-time business. So it's become imperative that security teams are part of this change management, process automation, which was always the case, but now also that they are relevant stakeholders to ensure that ownership of that adaptation of security is there in the transformation journeys. It's also become very important that IT and security are no longer functioning in silos, and that has already started changing. So even the basics of application development today, if a new application is being built, I'll give a classic example of VFast, which is a very, that's exactly what digital transformation is. Where the pandemic hit, they leveraged an existing model, and they said, we are going to build a whole new model of deliveries running on the same fellows who are delivering Swiggy parcels. And those same people are now doing door-to-door deliveries. So that is true digital transformation, where overnight a business model was changed, right? And leveraged what was on the ground in a situation of crisis. Now, this kind of innovation, even the basics of application development need to have app security as part of that process. It's not possible to not have cybersecurity education imparted to those developers and to those application owners. For what does it mean for companies like Inspira? For our customers, more importantly, it's become imperative that we have plug and play operationalized steps to meet this kind of demand. So that, we have automation, we have orchestration, and this is where the innovation is happening in the security portfolio and where it's needed the most. So today, almost every single customer that we work with is expecting that offering will include security orchestration and automation. It's expecting that we will use user entity behavior analytics. And our security products and services are just assumed to have this, which is, 1.5, even 2 years ago, this was innovation. And today it's just run-of-the-mill basic deliverable for us.
Correct.
And
the goalposts keep changing.
And this is where, and it's across the cloud, across on-premise, regardless of how mature or nascent a business is. So I think this is where security, innovation, and has met up to that demand, and it's a continuous process. It is not one that's going to end or ever meet a goal.
Sanjay, when we talk about innovation and digital operations at scale, data becomes the mind and cloud becomes the backbone for the digital model. This requires a fundamental rewrite of the technology stack. How do you see cloud enabling this shift? How are you leveraging it at Bestseller India?
So from our standpoint of view, so the cloud is enabling, and cloud is enabling business in every way, I would say. Particularly in scenarios where the customer is sitting at home and wherein we want our data to be there on the cloud and data to be used or the curated in a more meaningful way. So the technology stacks becomes very, very important. But at the same time, what Zutika was telling that, since it is, a customer data, so the privacy, the security becomes even more important. How to protect the data and the data kind of a data what we have is about demographic, it's about personal preferences, and that needs to be protected so that you don't get maligned or you don't get like a bad image within your customer, and then customers stop sharing data with you. So once we talk about that, managing the data, not only how you encrypt the data, how you manage the encrypted data or encryption keys. I think that becomes very, very important for us. And we have been working with some of our partners just to make sure that the data is with us, the data is and it's also not only the dark data or the data in use or data in processing. I think every variety or every kind of a data has the security built into it. And security is not just the afterthought, is that the forethought. When we are trying to have the data, then the forethought is basically how we ensure that the data is going to be secured, and that the next set of actions follows.
So, Sanjay, can you also hold forth on your cloud model? Are you looking at, have you adopted a hybrid model, a private cloud, public cloud? Can you talk a little about what's your cloud strategy? What does it look like?
So from the our cloud strategy, we are having most of our technology stack as of now on the private cloud. But then the idea is basically to move on to hyperscaler in next couple of months. So that's about the technology stack, and I know many of our applications which we are trying to refresh. They are all going to be native cloud applications being hosted on one of the hyperscalers. So some of the products, let's say what we are trying to partner with, be it our HRMS, or be it our point of sales, or be it basically our design management system or the product imagery system. They're all going to be native cloud products, and they're all offered on the private cloud of the product, or else basically being hosted on any of the hyperscalers, which could be AWS, Azure, or for that matter Google.
Rahul, at JFL, you need to scale up fast as you have spikes and variations in demand. How does cloud help you test and experiment to fuel new business models? How are you leveraging it as a force multiplier to support your data strategy and your innovation strategy? And can you also touch upon some of the cloud management challenges that you're facing?
For us, the data strategy essentially follows what in some ways enabling that as well. And then obviously the cloud strategy has to follow that vision as well. So we have more than 1,300 stores all over India, all of the, and a workforce that's widespread across India and few other countries really. So for all of them to be able to access the data, make decisions on a real-time basis, we need an infrastructure that can scale that fast, can respond to so many queries. Similarly, we generate a vast amount of data from our operations, from our transactions, from our supply chains, from our manufacturing systems. So to be able to get that data together, be able to standardize and enrich it, this is where cloud plays a key role for us to be able to scale up as we require, to be able to manage this data very effectively, and to be able to distribute that to a lot of users spread across all over India. Secondly, we do have seasonal variations, and to be able to respond to that, I think this is where the cloud plays a key part, which helps us focus on what matters the most, which is making the right information and the insights available, versus really worrying about managing the backend infrastructure as such. The other part that's sort of helping the cloud helps essentially is for us to test and experiment fast. For a lot of new things, we can leverage some of the off-the-shelf solutions available on the cloud to test the experiment, and obviously then customize for our own needs. So, and I think I see that role getting even bigger as we go along.
Can you talk to us about your cloud model? Are you on a hybrid cloud model or a private cloud? How are you looking at it?
So we have a different tech stack because we've grown through not just organically, but also through acquisitions, and we do have some of the infrastructure managed by us, as well as we also have cloud solutions that sort of we are leveraging. But yeah, I think the focus essentially would be for us is to create a next generation platform that can help us scale not just for today but for future as well.
Vijay, at Hindalco, you're trying to standardize the numerous applications across your plants and migrating them to a cloud environment. That must be challenging considering that you're a legacy organization. What are some of the challenges and complexities that you're facing along the way?
Yeah, you are right, Sneha. So the problem is now, as I said earlier, we are consolidating our ERP instances. But apart from that, when we consolidate that, the data center, which I discussed earlier, 60 or 70% of the data center servers and all that we have, that will be freed. And but since most of the plants, not only they are plants, they are also campus kind of environment. Other than those ERP instances, there are so many other applications also that runs on those data centers, and so many others are there. So you're right. So the challenge was now the data center will be freed up from the current systems ERP that we're doing. What to do with these application and how to manage these applications. So what we did is we tried to consolidate all the applications which are running across all the plants, and you will be surprised there were around 350 applications other than those ERP which were running in different plants and the current servers, right? And then we started categorizing those application broadly into which are the application which were integrated with the current ERP, which were the application which was standalone working, which were the application which was specific to that particular plants, which were the application which were related to some journal payroll kind of applications, right? And some of the applications were mainly towards dashboards and all. So we tried categorizing those applications in these categories, and then we discussed with Oracle and strategize how to take them forward, because running data center only for these kind of application is not the right fit and cost effective, because a lot of hardware obsolescence, maintenance costs, so many other things that comes because of all those things. So we worked with Oracle, and we thought of getting into the two options. One is let's lift and shift this application onto the cloud environment, re-platform them as needed by the cloud, and then wherever we are not fitting in these applications, let's have a SaaS product from the cloud, and then we consolidate it and reduce the cloud usage. That was the first option. Here we could see the benefit was immediate, right? The lift and shift was giving us immediate benefit for the organization, because we were able to free up all the data centers from these applications. The second options were, since these are the 324 applications, right? So since we had so many other plants, so most of the applications were also replicating. Like somebody has developed a small payroll at one location, there is another payroll which is working on other application. There is a third payroll, same kind of payroll, which are working on other plants. So the consolidating these application itself was another task. Instead of 4 payroll applications running in 11 plants, we have to run the only one application across all plants. So the second option, what we thought was, let's first do the standardization of these applications, reduce those applications to few numbers, then rescale onto a re-platform onto the cloud. Then if there are some missing objects, then buy it from a SaaS, and then roll it to the other applications. So what happens is, in both these journeys, we failed actually. We could not do lift and shift operation either in first option or second option. The challenges and reason why we could not fail, this we are a manufacturing company, so plants are running from so many years, right? Some of the plants are 60 years old, some are 20 to 30 years old, and these applications are also like that. So when we try to categorize why we failed, see, we in all the 325 applications, if you talk about application platforms, right, we had 22 kinds of platforms in these 325 applications. We have all kind of architecture. We have one tier architecture, two tier architecture, three tier architecture. Application tier were also of 12 types. Like one was Oracle middleware, some of IaaS, some were using Apache, some were using Oracle Fusions. Even to databases, right? We have a 13 kinds of databases in these applications. Some were using Oracle, some were using MS SQL, some were Domino, some were MongoDB, MX Access, all that, right? And to the extent of the OS, if I talk about, we had around 12 kind of OS which are running these applications. Like we have UX, we have IX, we have Windows servers, we have Red Hat Linux, all kind of complexity were there. Then we changed our strategy and we thought, because we have to match our ERP go live date also, the way we have to free the servers. So now what we have done is, we have changed our strategy. Now what we have, as I told you, we have categorized the application, right, which are of which kind. So what we did was, now since we have to go live with the ERP dates, and accordingly we have to free the servers, so we prioritize these applications. So first priority we gave to the applications which were integrated with the current ERP, so that when the new ERP will come, these applications should not be affected, because if this is not integrated, these applications will start non-functioning, right? So the first priority we gave to them, then we started working on this and we moved this application on the new environment and integrated them. And now we had around a lot of 74 applications which were integrating. So almost 2-3 are there left, which others we have already moved on to this new environment. Second kind of applications were there which are not integrated with this application, but were built on the same technology and same platform on which these ERP was running. So unless we have that environment, these applications will not run. So although we move on to a new environment, we cannot shut down this old environment because these needs all that AOL, libraries, templates to run these applications. So the second phase now we are working it on. So we are also moving on these applications to the same environment, which currently the exercise is on. And out of 324 applications, around 150 applications are getting automatically killed by the new ERP which is coming. So that is already been taken care by the new applications, the new ERP that we are implementing across metal business. So in that way, we are into this journey. Then what will be left out is only a specific application which are meant only for those particular plants, which are plant specific, or some of the other applications which are critical to the plants. We don't want to move them to the cloud environment. So those kind of applications will be left in the plants. For that, we are planning to have a kind of edge server or some small servers rather than a data center running.
Vijay from Walmart, how does your hybrid cloud data strategy help you elevate your innovation posture? How are you orchestrating the consistent management across the different cloud platforms?
Sure. So Walmart, we always have a large private data centers, and we are continue to build and we continue to invest on the private. And it varies, as I said, startups to a mid-size to a enterprise to a large enterprise. So Walmart definitely comes on the very large enterprise organization. Our cloud journey definitely going to be hybrid, and not just one public cloud, multiple public cloud for various reasons. I'll talk about it soon. So the approach is we have a mix of private and a public, and we have multiple regions in US where we're actually kind of multi-region, multi-cloud plus private as our long-term platform strategy. So that is how our strategy is heading towards. And this model is good especially for us and also the large organizations who already have a strong presence and have substantially invested in private data center, which already invested and kind of the cost is already sunk, and how do we leverage it? Companies like us, we already have built a lot of abstraction tools to manage private cloud adoption and administration. And we also have a strong engineering teams who can actually build more abstractions and handle the platform complexities when we have to deal with both private and public. So the benefit, definitely, what are the key benefits? Private data centers is a cost leverage for us. It's 60 to 70% cost compared to any public offering. I mean, after all the discounts and whatnot. And a legacy application, there's no point moving into the public because they have their own limitations, and we don't need any cloud native offering for legacy application to run. Right? We can still run it on a private on a very, very less cost. And the critical BCP workloads, business continuity applications can continue to stay in a private, thereby we don't have dependencies on the public. We do need a public for the newer applications, newer architecture, and also with 3x3, when I say 3x3, 3 different public, 2 public, 1 private into 3 different regions. Our HADR, high availability data disaster recovery strategy is very, very robust. So definitely all of these things will come its own complexities, cloud governance, compliances, security, very difficult to define design across multiple cloud. And we definitely need a single view of all the products, how it is actually working. It's not that we are leveraging these 3 clouds on its isolation, but is all connected. So observability is very, very important. How do we actually manage the application which are distributed across all of these things? And application architecture patterns vary. And cloud native, yes, but when I build a cloud native with the 3 cloud in picture, then the patterns varies. And the connectivity between the cloud also will be in a consideration to reduce the latencies. Investment are definitely high in these areas. So a few things. For a startup, my recommendations is definitely public will be a good cost driver, speed driver, and a mid-sized organization. Again, it's a public, but abstracting the IT organization activities can be looked at, and complexities are largely in the areas of how do we make it operational from security compliance. Large organizations can definitely look at a hybrid. The investment is definitely in the automation, abstraction layers, but if it definitely yield the ROI if we leverage private in a right manner.
Saurabh, in the wake of the pandemic, organizations are making cloud the front and center of their operations. However, limitations around data transfer, lack of visibility, and ownership are often overlooked by those undergoing this cloud transformation. This results in overconsumption of cloud services, performance, and ultimately increased cost. Where do you think organizations are missing the boat when it comes to cloud deployment?
The nuances that you touched upon, those are something which is primarily a change management. So let's say when you change from A technology to B, it's the same as how you change from A business to B. So where organizations largely are thinking it through today or should think through is, one is around, are you very clear that what you want out of cloud? Just moving to cloud cannot be an objective. There has to be something more to it. So has that dive deep happened? That is question 1. Question 2 is that when you are moving in, how you are doing a fungibility of skills. If it is Azure or AWS or GCP, how are you employing the skills or partners, and what exactly do you want them to do? The third is all these players provide a strong metering techniques. There are several other intermediary players in the market who provide metering techniques. So is there a governance around it? And the fourth is largely wherein how you relook at it every 6 months and see that what you wanted to achieve is what you are being able to achieve. So these are 4 nuances wherein organization largely either are looking at or will pivot to look at, and therefore make cloud movement efficient.
Dheeraj, you heard our panelists talk about the various challenges that they are facing and the limitations that they have in their cloud environment. You heard them talk about legacy, technology debt, regulations, interoperability, and also integration. How can Splunk help customers deal with each of these challenges?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well summarized there from all these challenges that folks are seeing. So there's definitely some parallels, as you pointed out, right? But one thing which is common across all of them is access to all the data in real time and in its raw format, right? Once again, all the data access in real time and in its raw format, because and once you have that all in a single source of truth, a single platform, you can start again making those decisions, actions much more clearly, much more efficiently, and much more at scale. So the decision could be to prevent a security breach at one point. It could be the same data being used to make sure your operations are running smoothly. And the third case, it could be addressing a customer situation. So, that's the kind of holy grail. I mean, it's very hard to do. Trust me, it's everybody wants to do it, but I can guarantee there's very few organizations in the world who've been able to do it, and even they are always catching up because the pace of new data coming on board and new data sources and new data silos is so high that you're never complete, you're never done, right? So your data governance strategy remains a strategy. It's never really complete, right? And I'm actually going to call on Vijay because Vijay at Walmart happens to be solving this. I'm talking theory, but he's actually solving it and always kind of getting better at it at Walmart with Splunk. So Vijay, you want to touch on it?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think as I mentioned, observability is very, very important for us with all of these things. And with moving to a triplet model, like all these three public, what we are looking at is how Splunk can actually help us in resolving some of this logs, traces, and metrics. And right now we are looking at Splunk more on the log side, and we are actually engaging them how they can actually solve the problem that we are looking at across these three clouds. So yes, we are definitely leveraging Splunk for a lot of our log insights, and one of probably the largest Splunk clusters that we have, Dheeraj, and definitely it has its own complexities and operational challenges. Yeah, but that's how it is actually working out with us, right?
Jyotika, how should organizations mitigate the risks involved with hybrid cloud environment and what governance models come into play?
So I think, we used to be in these early days a few years ago of cloud transformation, where customers used to question cloud security measures. And they'd question Microsoft and Amazon and Google on these subjects. But I think today we've come far from that. And the environments that we have on Azure, on AWS, on GCP, on average, these are as secure, if not more secure, than many on-prem infrastructures. Like both the Vijay's mentioned earlier, across the spectrum from Hindalco to Walmart, most customers either have or are on that journey to have a very complex hybrid strategy with either multiple cloud providers, with private cloud, and with their on-premise environments. And these decision-making factors on what goes where, how do we set up governance across this, these are based on cost, they're based on availability of business services, they're based on the technical viability parameters for legacy applications. We're not seeing these concerns of security issues like there used to be in the early days for that decision making on what goes on prem and what goes on cloud. So the more vulnerable aspects today for cybersecurity come into the system integration processes across these from a governance point of view, ensuring the APIs, the applications, the integrations between these services are secure. That the data that is in transit is as secure as the data that is in storage. So this is where the shared responsibility comes in actually between various technology partners that work with that customer, not just with the cloud provider. And so today's cloud security monitoring, if you look at the use cases that we have to set up and build out, these are not as simple as, making sure the storage assets on your S3 bucket are private and public or ensuring that PII data is protected. These are now out of the box. They're just available. The more diverse use cases rely on anomaly detection. They need context to be given to those standard security use cases to make real good sense of them. We also have to ensure that with this, we have strong VAPT, vulnerability assessment, penetration testing to meet those security concerns. Because like we mentioned earlier, we've discussed the speed at which innovation is happening on the cloud. So these are the areas that are more important. And this level of education, of consulting is expected to come from the system integrators like Inspira. And we identify the security owners across the vendors, across the products, across the business services at the customer's environment to ensure that these kinds of vulnerabilities are assessed. And to Dheeraj's point, while we make, we will map this, we map the people, we map the processes for this, we put it together. But we've seen only products like Splunk that can come together and put the technology together. Because bringing this 360 view, 360-degree view with this speed at which the data hits from so many diverse systems that not just manage your performance, but also manage your security, I think that is the piece of the puzzle that is now cracked. So that's the interesting part, that how do we now put these people and these processes to work? Because today we do have the technology to do this, which we didn't earlier.
Dheeraj, there's one more aspect I'd like to touch upon with you. Cloud native DevOps practices promote rapid innovation and fuel transformation, but it also introduces a new potential point of failure. How can organizations best deal with this risk?
That's a great question again, Sneha, because all of you are trying to drive the cloud journey. And as you said, there's not just lifting and shifting, but refactoring and rewriting of many of these applications. People are actually writing microservices based, serverless, containerized applications. And what that causes is, traditionally we are used to getting data from logs, like Vijay said he's doing with terabytes and terabytes of data. But what is also becoming super important is two other components of this, which is the metrics from all your devices. And the third, which is the most complex one, is the concept of traces. And I know we're getting a little technical here, so I'll peel it back into simple terms, right? Think about you walking on a beach and you have footprints out there, and you can look back and see what footprints you had in the beach. And that's exactly similar to what a trace is. A trace is essentially you as a consumer buying something on the Swiggy app, right? That is tracing. That is an actual transaction which touches hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of different pieces of code. So imagine millions of consumers transacting on an application, and where is the failure happening for that one consumer? Super hard problem to solve, right? And so Splunk gives that full visibility of all those, not just the logs and the metrics, but all those thousands of millions of traces, and brings it together in a very easy to use format and observe what's going on, not just in minutes, but in seconds. And so that's how far we've come. As to Jutika's point, is the technology is now there, so you can actually service these consumers in real time, as I said earlier, but handle that complexity and the scale and do it securely, right? So I'd love to engage with you more to talk about these concepts, but tread in this direction very with some thought and process behind it, because it can cause a lot of complexity, but there's definitely great technology like Splunk to help you bring it all together in one platform. And we actually launched a specific product called Observability Cloud just in early May to specifically go up and address these problems, and actually are in deep discussions with Walmart on exactly that, because they want to transact globally on all their Walmart.com websites. So I don't know if Vijay, if you had anything more to add around that as well, but I think you're at the front and center of this again.
Yeah. So yes, I think we are in the journey as of that observabilities, log trace, and metrics. How do we actually do it? And it's a very challenging problem to solve, and we're working with definitely the Splunk teams and also internal or telemetry teams, how we can actually solve together. So it's
Saurabh, I'd like to wrap up with you. What should organizations factor in to formulate a hybrid cloud strategy that is secure, harmonious, and cost effective? Can you give us your perspective on predictive IT, especially with respect to cloud metering costs that are not predictable? And also, can you tell us where do you see hybrid cloud taking the organizations next?
So let's see it from two perspectives. I think from the companies who are creating products, largely whom we know as OEMs, for them to scale, somewhere they have realized that they would want to go SaaS model, and SaaS model can be supported via the common infrastructure, which is via cloud. Now they be on their cloud or they lease another cloud, that is a choice. But in order to scale, OEMs have realized that SaaS will be the next big thing when it comes to product growth. So thumbs up to cloud on that ways. Now, second is that, because of the macro environment that has got changed, everybody wants to change quickly. So that is where the advent of cloud has become rampant. So somewhere it has given a push in terms of adoption of cloud, primarily for speed. The third thing is that I think where the retardation of speed will come, because the regulatory changes or the support from regulation to adopt these open economies, it may take a little bit of a backseat and therefore hit back. So somewhere having optimality of regulation when the opening up of cloud environments are happening is what will be the new theme. So A, adoption will be rampant. B, OEMs will expand via SaaS, and the optimality or the mitigation of threats would be around faster regulations, friendlier regulations, and a second would be, the way you want to consume, because unfortunately on SaaS, everything one cannot get. So these two will be the mindset change. So that is how I see the cloud dynamics to be operating in the world.
With that, I think we'll move into a quick wrap up of today's session. We tried to touch upon a lot of issues. We saw the changing priorities of digital transformation initiatives, the way organizations are becoming data led, the various ways in which they are adopting data to fuel their digital transformation initiatives, how cloud is becoming a foundational layer for all of this innovation, the challenges and complexities that organizations are facing with their cloud deployments. I think this is enough conversation for the time frame that we had. Thank you everyone for joining us. Thanks once again for spending time for this conversation. Thank you.